I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Today is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. And everybody here in Minnesota and probably out into the Dakotas is paying particular attention to the weather. We are expecting a storm of epic proportions, they're saying, could be anywhere from 10 to 12 inches in Minneapolis, up to 20 inches in surrounding and rural areas. So the word is be advised, be aware, pay attention, try to stay off the roads if you can. And if you're on the road, be very careful, be mindful of snowplows. The state is doing a marvelous job in the counties and cities in trying to keep the roads clear and pathways available to you. But the better thing that we can all do as drivers or members of community is sort of not be in the way, not be a problem. Anyway, this is Minnesota. We expect this every year, and here it comes. Well, I want to, first of all, thank all of you who enjoy the program, participate, send comments about it. I want to invite you once again to support by going to our YouTube channel, YouTube Insight News channel, and subscribing to this program. Subscribe, like, and share. We've got around 300 or so subscribers on the channel presently. Our goal is to boost that to 1,000. And to do that quickly, we can do it with your help. If you individually take a minute, take the time, either during the show or after, to go over to YouTube, Insight News channel, find the Conversation with Al McFarlane, and subscribe. And tell your friends. We're having wonderful conversations. We call them robust conversations. We do this 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock. And not only are we presenting on YouTube, actually we're on two YouTube platforms, the Insight News platform and also the platform of Black Press USA, the platform of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, which is the Black Press of America. So we're pleased for that partnership with them. We also are on Black Press USA's Facebook page, the Insight News Facebook page, and we are streaming to Twitter, Insight News Twitter account, and also to our LinkedIn account. So we're using a variety of platforms to connect, to reach you. The beauty of it all is that our what do you call it? Our portfolio or our toolkit of communications capabilities includes the daily presentation of these programs on public access television in St. Paul, thanks to our partners there at SPNN, St. Paul Neighborhood Network, and also in Minneapolis at the Minneapolis Public Access Channel as well. Finally, well, two more things. On a regular basis on Tuesdays, the program is also a live radio broadcast on KFAI 90.3 FM. And the most beautiful thing from my point of view is that these stories, these interviews end up being stories in Insight News. I mean, why are we doing this? Quick background. We started having what has emerged into the Conversation with Al McFarlane as a series of breakfast meetings at a restaurant in North Minneapolis, might have been 15, 20 years ago, a place called Lucille's Kitchen. It was a Greasy Spoon, nice, real neighborhood people. Everybody in the neighborhood showed up every day. And we'd be having our editorial meeting, me and two or three writers or freelancers, and people would lean into our conversation. So we'd say, pull up a chair, join the conversation. And in short order, that ended up being a big table that filled half the restaurant. And we said, look, why don't we open this conversation up to everybody, invite a partnership with KMOJ and later KFAI and other organizations and community and create a forum. And that's how this thing got going. So we're still doing that. And the beauty is, I say that, you know, I'm an interviewer, I'm a journalist. My trade, my skill, my gift is in talking to people, writing the stories. And the technology allows me to do that, to talk with my guests today, Dr. Reverend Mary Whitney and the Superintendent of Parks, Al Bangoura. But the interview that's a one-on-one, I'm able to share with thousands and thousands and thousands both through the digital platforms we're on, but also the 100,000 readers of Inside News every week. So I think it's a win-win-win. And all of it boils down to creating community, creating engagement, our capacity, our ability to articulate a future that serves our interest. And so that's what we're doing. Well, with that, do the thing. Go to the YouTube channel, Insight News YouTube channel, find the conversation, subscribe, share, and like. Today's program is going to be a great program, two great conversations. As I mentioned, today I have Al Bangoura, who's the superintendent of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. And following that, an interview with my friend, longtime friend and leader in community, Reverend Dr. Whitney, a prolific author and an expert on domestic violence, equity, cultural diversity. She's a trainer focusing on Black history, politics, race, and education. Two great conversations. Before we start that, I open up the show every day with what I call hot topics, and we've got two for you today. One is an item that comes out of the Washington Post. It's an article. Actually, this one was published on February 11th, an article by Jacob Bogage. I think I've said his name properly. But the headline is, in a tight labor market, some states are looking to another type of worker, children. Interesting. Subhead says bills advancing in the Iowa and Minnesota state legislatures would roll back child workplace protections to address worker shortages. Interesting indeed. I'll just share a couple of paragraphs. The article says, as local economies grapple with a tightening labor market, some state legislatures are looking to relax child labor protections to help employers meet hiring needs. It's part of a persistent trend in labor economics, experts say. When employers struggle to find talent, many prefer to hire younger, cheaper workers rather than increase pay and benefits to attract adults. Because of the high demand for workers where there are holes in the system, unfortunately, child laborers can get caught up in staffing some of those holes, said David Weil, a professor of social policy and management at Brandeis University and a former wage and hour administrator in the labor department. I'll conclude with this. Legislators in Iowa and Minnesota introduced bills in January to loosen child labor law regulations around age and workplace safety protections in some of the country's most dangerous workplaces. Minnesota's bill will permit 16 and 17-year-olds to work construction jobs. The Iowa measure would allow 14 and 50-year-olds to work in certain jobs and meat packing plants. There's more. You can go to the Washington Post to get the full story. Interesting. And you know, in recent weeks, the state has brought legal charges against a couple of major multinational meat packing operations in southern Minnesota in particular, but I believe also in Wisconsin, because they were using contractors to clean the equipment in the meat packing plants, and the contractors included underage children. So it's a big concern, something we have to pay attention to, and I think we cannot let the convenience and the profit motive of companies prevail over the safety interest of our families, our children, and our workers. Well, that's one thing. I'd love to know what you think about that. If you had an idea or concern, drop us a note on one of the comment sections on the platform that you're watching us on. So the second piece is, I'm taking it from the House Daily Session. It's a piece we published in Inside News. This one, an article by Margaret Stevens, published February 15th. And it says, as a headline, after 2 years and no bonding bill, the House DFL unveils a nearly $2 billion capital investment campaign. Well, you know, it's part of the glee in Minnesota right now around the fact that the state is looking at $18 billion budget surplus, a lot of money people are lining up everywhere to get their share. Of course, Republicans want the money returned as a tax refund or tax gifts to individuals, and probably more to big companies. But I think the Democrats are saying this is a golden opportunity to address critical infrastructure and more. And so this article says the legislature usually doesn't get a bonding package proposed as early as February. But since it's been more than 2 years since a bonding bill is passed, capital funding is past due, said Representative Fu Lee, DFL of North Minneapolis. Fu Lee is our legislator here in North Minneapolis. A proposal for nearly $1.9 billion in capital projects across the state was unveiled to the House Capital Investment Committee. Most of the funding, $1.5 billion, would come from bond sales, and the remainder, $391.75 million, from the general fund. The proposal came in the form of delete all amendments to House File 669 and House File 670, both sponsored by Lee. Now, I'm not sure what that terminology means, delete all amendments, but we'll discover that. Fu Lee says it's, quote, "It's long past time to bring in the public on this important bill. Hundreds of critical infrastructure projects have gone unfunded. There are projects that are crucial to communities throughout the state, and inflation causes them to go up in cost the longer we delay this unfinished work. It's time to complete the work of 2022. Minnesota can't wait any longer." Several members expressed appreciation for the work that has gone into the bill. Representative Leon Lilly, who's from North St. Paul, noted that hundreds of hours of hearings and tours across the state have taken place, and others commented as well. Well, like I said, the state is looking at a rare opportunity with the availability of funding, of what, not funding, but a budget surplus of nearly $18 billion. And if you've been watching Inside News, you'll see that for the past several weeks, we run a full-page ad called the United Black Legislative Agenda, articulating interest of various sectors of the Black community. And we want you to check that out if you haven't so far. If you're in an organization that is doing things like having a day on the Hill, let us know. We want to promote that. We think it's important that we do all we can to motivate civic engagement, motivate awareness in and among our voters and our residents of our community, and to create this sense of equity. We have to tell our people that our voice matters, our presence matters, and that we are bringing a unique perspective that is particularly responsive, sensitive, humane to the questions of state, the questions of governance. And so we have to show up. That's what we're going to try to do. Well, let me go from there to talk to my first guest today. And I'm pleased to have Al Bangoura here. Al Bangoura is the head of the Minneapolis park system since 2019. He's served as superintendent of what's been called a nationally acclaimed park system, the Minneapolis park system. It encompasses 180 parks and attracts almost 30 million visits annually. Bangoura is a certified park and recreation professional. He served in leadership roles in Minneapolis and in Charlotte, North Carolina. Superintendent Bangoura is passionate about serving the community, particularly Minneapolis youth and families. His commitment to youth brought him to Minneapolis with a clear mission to increase financial investments and services to the city's youth. He's committed to breaking down barriers to access, to use and park experiences, and he's driven by innovation and trends that meet the needs of the community. He's committed to collaborations, partnerships, and to listening and raising the voices of all community residents and park users. And he uses community input and data insights to develop strategies and make organizational decisions for the betterment of the park system and the millions of people that the system serves. In his time as superintendent, he's led a variety of initiatives to enhance data collection and to expand services, to improve community connections, and to strengthen public and private partnerships. Al Bangoura, welcome to the conversation. Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. It's an absolute honor and privilege to be here with you today, Al, and I really appreciate this. And I'm finally having a moment to spend some time with you. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for taking the time to spend with me. I think the work you do is so critical, so important, and I think you've done so much to elevate the sense of equity and the sense of invitation where there had not been one, or where there may have been ambivalence at best in years past, but you've brought front and center the invitation and the expectation, the standard that when we say all, we mean all. And that's a wonderful
Absolutely.
thing. I reached out to you because of what you've just announced in the creation of Spark Studios.
Yes.
And I'm going to say a word about it, but have you really explain it.
Sure.
There's a new project you guys are unveiling at Harrison Recreation Center, which is here in the Harrison neighborhood on North Irving. It's called Spark Studios. And the idea is to use technology. You're bringing in like computers and audio production, sound isolation booth, engineering workstations, podcast production, music production, videography, photography production, gaming, art, just a kind of a facility to unleash the imagination of young people in the community. So that's how it reads to me. But let me ask you to tell about the Spark
Sure.
project and what you all intend to deliver for the community.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah. This really started, I had the privilege of coming back here in 2019, but I had 19 years of work since 95, working through the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, or through the system. I had the privilege of working in multiple different neighborhoods. And when I came back here, the privilege of coming back here and to serve in this role in 2019, I had already had an idea of what I wanted to do and to impact the lives of young people. Mm-hmm. The previous board was very clear. They said, we need to invest in youth. We need to really commit to youth. There's many levers that are pulled. And I think on the backs of young people, sometimes we always talk about these programs, these ideas. But what I was very clear about was that the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board could be that place where we can impact the lives and change the lives of young people. And what I mean by that is in perpetuity, meaning that it's embedded into the general fund. So I worked very hard for the last previous 3 years, to get $2.6 million in levy that's paid by the taxpayer, by us, to support the young people in Minneapolis. So every young person in the city of Minneapolis recognize and know that the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board committed to you through taxpayer dollars and through money that is going to be ongoing, meaning it doesn't go away. It's not a one-time fund. It is now committed to young people. And with that, we hired 7 new people, a manager and 6 specialists to work in these Spark Studios. The Spark Studio concept really began when I was working in Powderhorn from 2000, 2006. I had the privilege of working in that amazing, vibrant park. And what really started for me was the fact that we had lost several young people to homicide, to murder. They lost their lives. And I knew them personally. And for me, it was a matter of saving lives. And so I brought young people together and I said, what inspires you? What connects you? And music, right, was a very common language. And so we took a small room at Powderhorn next to the pottery studio, and we built a small studio from there. And that studio was run by a person I had. Her name was Hadilia Syed, and she went to IPR, and luckily she understood audio engineering, and we built that studio from the proceeds from the art fair that was down to the park. We built the studio. We brought young people into that space, and in that space they sat together and they wrote and they created. They got to know each other, and the simple thing was to get people to understand, and these young people understand, that the more you know each other, that you connect with each other, you're less likely to then have conflict, right? Because now you're advocating and supporting a space where you come together and it becomes your community. and you advocate for that space because it's an amazing place to be. So they were creating music, doing videos and such. Institute of Production Recording came by, they heard about it. We then took an old warming room that was down at the bottom of Powderhorn. If you know Powderhorn, it was that old warming room that's connected to the building down below. We transformed that space and we created a bigger space, and we created a really incredible production studio and primarily focused on music. And the really cool thing was Stephen Slater, who was working with me from IPR, we had down there a mixing board that Prince used. It was his mixing board down there in this space. And this was back in 2000. And so we then took that, and then I moved through the organization. I moved on and to other places, and the studio was kind of kept alive. And then I happened to leave for a while, then I came back. And so this initiative for me, understanding what that impact meant to the community, I then said, we're going to take this forward for youth, and we're going to build more studios. Right now, Harrison Park, so Powderhorn exists. Harrison Park Studio, which is, of course, at 503 North Irving Avenue, which we all know where it's at, is an amazing building we just opened up on February 13th. And what this space is, and we call it Sparked, because Sparked is it's not about the technology, right? I can tell you what the technology we have in the space, but what it is about unleashing the creative spirit, the creative soul of young people. Because in school, you're learning, right? You're learning stuff. But if you go after school and you walk over to the park, you now can then do more enhanced work or explore your creative spirit. So when you come to this particular facility, it is an incredible space that, like you just mentioned, that has a variety of things that you can do in there. We have everything from, I'll just walk you through real quickly, and what the space has in it. It really is, we have computers, 5 Mac desktop stations, 10 MacBook laptops. We have audio production. So we have professional sound isolation booth, audio engineering workstations, 5 studio interfaces for podcast productions. We have 10 MIDI keyboards and headphones, guitars, drum kits. We have photo and video. So we have DSLR cameras, photo and video production equipment, lighting kits, backdrops, tripods. We have gaming. So we're really looking at esports because that is a huge industry, and people are actually getting scholarships now in colleges to go and do sports, but they learn technology through that. So we have 2 gaming stations. We have art illustration tablets, 3D printers, color printer, and high resolution scanners, crafting materials and supplies. And we also have instructions on a how-to library of technology, arts, and engineering books, smart boards, and a large sliding whiteboard so that young people can sit and learn and we can teach them. So what we're trying to do is unlock the creative spirit of young people, but to meet them where they are today. The one thing that I heard very clearly when I was meeting with the mayor and Hennepin County and the school board and the libraries, the Chamber of Commerce, was that we don't see enough Black and brown or BIPOC youth and children working up through the ranks in design or illustration or architecture. These spaces will have that opportunity to learn about design and architecture. It opens up the door to them to grow and learn. And when we heard that, the one thing that I was already doing was building these spaces for young people to explore these careers and open up the doors of possibility. And I've always said, as you walk in with like an empty folder, right? And then you start to put in there the knowledge, you start putting the skills, animation 101, micro entrepreneur business 101, 102, 103, right? You start building this portfolio, and we're teaching them through really fun ways of learning. And so they're building this book of knowledge so that when this child then gets not just good enough, but excellence of equipment and excellence of experiences, they then can compete in the world. And they can be on the equal footing as they start to look at careers that maybe they didn't know. We're unlocking the next brilliant mind, the next artist, the next architect, the next engineer, the next videographer, the next musician. All these things that were opened up for these young people in these spaces. We spent probably somewhere near $600,000 just to build this space out. The great thing about it, we improved the daycare room, but we also added in air conditioning, which, these buildings, some of them don't have them. So this kind of layered on air conditioning in this space that people can go to. So the purpose was really to help build the creative skills and cultivate career readiness through free multimedia art programs that they could access through technology as a resource. And the one last thing, and I will stop here too, is that we have Powderhorn, we have Harrison. The next one is Whittier. The next one will be Luxton. The next one will be Phillips Community Center. And then the sixth one will be Graco Park, which is that new LEED certified building across the river. 6 studios across our park system, free to young people to walk into when they hit the door, to decide what they want to do and how they want to create and what their imaginations will take them, whatever that might be. This is not just about music. It's about all the experiences they can have, right? Documentary work, right? Architecture, design. They can walk into these spaces. We're going to have all of these built this year. We should have probably about, the last one will be Luxton this year. Phillips Community Center should be early 2024, and then Graco 2025. In the next several years, we will have 6 Spark Studios igniting the imagination of young people in our communities, and in perpetuity, free, meaning that these specialists that work in these spaces are full-time staff that are going to be in each of these areas. And this is for our young people to experience some incredible opportunities in our parks where they can walk to and get the experience.
Al, I can say you're an easy interview because you answered all my questions before I formed them, and you just flowed. And that's how I like to have interviews go. Thank you so much. What a wonderful, wonderful set of opportunities. So the big picture, as you're talking, I'm imagining, I'm closing my eyes and thinking that what you're providing is a way for young people to assemble the world. You're creating a place where they are having access to tools that allow them to develop their own ways of knowing and of packaging reality, of packaging existence, of being able to tap into both history and laterally across the footprint that the digital world provides them. That footprint is global indeed. We used to, when you and I grew up, maybe before you, Al, heard from our parents, stay in your neighborhood. And the neighborhood for me in Kansas City was, to the alley and 1 block down to 28th Street, 1 block down to 29th Street. And that's where you had to stay. That was my neighborhood. Today, the planet is my neighborhood because technology gives me the ability to be present, to connect, and to share and to learn anywhere on the planet. And you are providing that technology to our people and to young people throughout the city. I think it's so powerful. And I was going to ask you, I don't know if you were here back when Model Cities was first started. Did you know Ron Washington by any chance?
I know the name, but not personally.
Ron Washington was the creator of the South Side Communication Center. It's over there right now. It's where I think one of the facilities for, well, I don't know what's there now, but it was on 30th and it was on Lake Street at around 4th or 5th or 6th, somewhere around there. But he had as part of the Model Cities campaign, a communication center. And they had all the latest videography equipment, cameras that they would lend out, lease out, teach, educate, and encourage people to go out and start documenting their history, their neighborhoods. And out of that, that's one of the ways that I got started in business, by being able to have access to both the equipment and the vision, the opportunity, because nobody knew where the technology would take us. But to have it available to mess with it, to play with it and to learn is invaluable. And out of that, I say Insight News emerged. There was a paper called the Southside News and the Phillips Alley. A bunch of the neighborhood papers. This town exploded in community neighborhood literacy, primarily driven by newspapers at the time, but also in cable television and beyond. And I think that you're setting in motion the next iteration, the globalization, where people walk into the opportunity recognizing that who they are and where they are is at the center of a universe of connectivity, and that all of it is accessible to them. What do you think?
No, that's well said, Al. I really appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is an incredible opportunity to connect young people to the world, right? And to open up those possibilities. I know that when I was a young man, I was a child growing up in Milwaukee. I was living on the east side. And I remember I had an old bike that I had, and I had access to that bike I think I was about 8 or 9 years old at the time. And I took that bike, and it was a single speed, one of those racing old bikes. And I took that from the east side of Milwaukee, and I rode my bike along Lake Michigan all the way to the Art Institute, because I had the pedal power in my legs to get me to change my paradigm from where I existed, what neighborhood I was in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I got my bike, I rode over to the Art Institute, parked my bike, didn't lock it up because it was so ugly, no one was going to steal it, but it was mine. And I walked up to the second level, and I sat there and I looked out. I was a drafting table, and I was the only person of color, the only young black child that sat in this room. And drafting table, music playing in the background, all sorts of music, jazz, classical, right? And I was drawing, looking across Lake Michigan. And I remember how profound that changed my life and what it meant for me, because here was an experience that I had the opportunity to experience through the parks department, but it was kind of the arts area, that as a young person to experience that, to be able to have that in my life as a young person. And it changed me. It really did, because it opened up the world to me. And that was just kind of very visceral, right? It was like you're drawing. Now, technology can open up the world to many different things. The access to design, access to music and video, and the world around you. And if we truly are talking about impacting the lives of our young people in our cities, and we keep saying this ACP 50, areas of concentrated poverty in places, I'm looking at the possibilities. I'm looking about giving a child access. I'm tired of people always saying things about, we're going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to come in and we're going to tell you what to do. These brilliant young people that sit out here today, they just need access. They need an opportunity to grow. And we're going to tap into that. And we're going to make sure that they have that equal footing to be able to see the world and open up and change their paradigm to how they see the world and remap it. And once they do that and they see those possibilities, it's limitless to what they can do. So these spaces, and I wish if you go to our YouTube, you can Spark Studios, our webpage. It's an amazing, beautiful place. When you walk into these 1970s buildings that were like cinder block, and now there's this brand new, beautiful space. It's really incredible. And we deserve that. This is not about a matter of it's just good enough. We deserve it. We should have that. We should invest in that and invest in our youth, because if they feel something and they feel the value for the space, they'll come in and experience it. And so really what I'm trying to do here, and what we're trying to do in the Park and Recreation Board, is to have a place to where a child can go to, walk in the door, hit the door, and know that they can do something immediately. I want to learn about animation. Let's go do it. I want to learn about opening up a small business, have a kiosk, and build things through 3D printers, or kind of do hats and T-shirts, and then be able to run and how to be a micro entrepreneur, right? You might not go to a 4-year college, but you're going to have the skills and stuff that can take you to your college. You can go into engineering, you can go into technology, STEAM. The pathway is not determined by just going to 4 years. It's about what you learn and how you grow. And there's many opportunities that you can have. And so
it would
we're
be
going to
cool,
do that.
maybe even I'm thinking as you're speaking, it'd be fun to figure out how we could originate this program from time to time at the center, where we could feature and involve in an internship type of way some of the young people that are learning and accessing the opportunities you're creating there. Well, listen, thank you so much. I'm excited.
You're welcome.
And I want you to come back, because there's so much more to talk about with the park system, and particularly this whole notion that I've brought up about equity. How do we get to where our people, and when I say our people, I'm talking particularly about Black people, but the Black people I'm talking about include everybody else, white, Asian, Latino, Native, all of us are people. So I want to talk about that in the future, and the work you're doing to ensure that you've got a world-class resource available to world-class people here in Minneapolis. Thank you so much, Al Bangoura.
Thank you so much. It's really been a privilege, and I look forward to coming back. There's a lot more I can share with you, and I would love to be able to share what we're doing within Park and Rec. And
let's set up
grateful opportunity.
Set up a regular visit where you and key team members over a schedule are here to give us updates on the park board. I'd love to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good day.
Take care.
I'm Al McFarlane. Wow, what a good conversation. Al Bangoura, thank you so much. And kudos to you and the team at the Minneapolis Parks System. Keep up the good work. I want to shift now to my second guest, and she's a dear friend, a person that I call a spiritual and educational and a team leader in general in the community. And she's also an author, an organizer, and many, many more things. Welcome to Reverend Dr. Mary Whitney. Dr. Whitney, how you doing?
I'm great, sir. How are you? Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, thank you for being here. You know, you work in, among many things, providing to victims of abuse, personal coaching that tries to help that person find connections and the fluidity, the forward motion, guidance to changing and building, restoring their healthy life. You do that through your counseling, you do it through your work as an elder, a Presbyterian minister. You do it through your teaching and training around domestic violence, and through what's called restorative practices and trauma responsive care. You also do that through promoting and teaching about equity and cultural diversity, and also Black history, politics, race, education, kind of an embodiment of connected awarenesses that in total invite the individuals you come in contact with to grow into their fullest and best human being. So thank you for being here. And you are a prolific author. Let me start by saying, let's talk about your book, your work as a writer, as an author. We want to share some of your book stories and your website as well. But
Thank you so much.
So walk us through the catalog. We've got several things on the screen here. Walk us through these books.
Okay, I have the first one called Robbed of a Childhood, Raped by the System. And I wrote it in a bit of anger because I was upset of the way I had been raised and taken from my mother because she had passed away. I was 11 years old. And I didn't know at the time how to publish, if I was going to publish or if it was even going to be a book. But I was just writing it. And then eventually I started researching things on the internet, and I learned how to write and publish my book myself on my own as a self-published author. That is what I am. And I have 5 books. So the first one, as I said, was Robbed of a Childhood, Raped by the System, because it talked about being molested from the age of 6 to the age of 11. And it's probably what helped me become the advocate that I am today, is because I know the experience that many are traveling through. And I believe for myself as an advocate, when I'm being taught by others who have yet to understand what blood and guts look like in your living room, then you have yet to understand the road I traveled. It's one thing to be knowledgeable through theory or practice ideologies or narratives, but to live the experience and be the person who's sharing the story with those who have experienced same or similar issues. And how do we go from there?
What was the most difficult part about retelling or telling that story in this form in the book? And what have you discovered looking back now has been the most beneficial consequence of telling the story, not only to you, but to the people that you share the story with who read the book?
I would say for me is because when I became an advocate and learning the power and control wheel, the intimidation, the isolation, the humiliation, the coercion, those kinds of things, the financial abuse, those kinds of things, it could be, to me, used as a different kind of tool if it wasn't delivered by the right kind of advocate. And so what do I mean by that? I don't use one source of information to destroy a person who has yet to understand the information being given. And so the hardest part for me was when I had a friend read Robbed of a Childhood Rape. Well, he didn't even get to read it. I said, I'm going to sit in this room with you. I'm going to read this to you because it has yet to be published. And I don't even want to give it into someone's hands who might use it to their advantage rather than the advantage of helping save lives and change lives. And he said,
what do you mean by that? Tell me, I'm asking you to go deep on that thought. That's a critical point you're making. What do you mean?
What do I mean?
How could someone abuse the information that you're providing?
It's just depends. I'm not talking about a person who's been harmed and trying to figure out how to save their own life. I'm talking about those who will take the knowledge you have, go and get a grant and make that information their own as if it was their story being told. It's not truth to reality.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
Okay. Do you have the book with you there by any chance?
Yes, I do.
Pick a favorite part.
I have the first one. And I'll explain why. This is the original Robbed of a Childhood Rape by the System. But I changed it because I got 5 stars nationally. And they told me that the little girl depicted on the cover, lifting her hands toward heaven from hell is the darkness below, does not tell the story of the blood and guts that came out of me during the experience of being molested as a child. And so how do you transform yourself from what you believe you were being groomed to be a new individual created by one's own mindset and new experiences and knowledge that guide us to true deliverance? I don't pretend to be transformed because transformation is like transmutation. It's kind of like coming from a cocoon to the butterfly.
Is there a portion of the book that you'd be willing to read right now? Is there something that comes to mind that would give people a sense of your voice and the voice of your writing?
Yes, I can read a little bit. First of all, it thanked my children and those who were in my life under the acknowledgement, because without them, I probably would not be alive today, because they helped me understand there was meaning to life inside their life. It breathed life into my life. And I wanted to say, all throughout my life, I wondered why I turned out the way I did. After working through all the mess that was my life today, I really believe I get it. You see, oftentimes we don't see or explore our own insecurities to any depth. While we can easily point out the flaws of our loved ones, neighbors, and anyone else who might cross our path. Today, I work with men, women, and youth exiting correctional institutions, a profession I love, and doing this work comes easy. It has afforded me an opportunity to work with people at depth to help them unearth their potential, and it has helped me to look at my own flaws and embrace the work I need to do in my own life. For the past 9 years, at that time, it's been over 20 years now, that I have worked to create an organization called Women Planting Seeds, which we're not talking about that right now, but I created it because there were men, women, and youth exiting corrections, and I saw that there were not appropriate resources that would have helped me change my life, that I believed I could help them change their lives. And so for those years, the goal of my organization is to allow a person who had served their time to come back into society. Men, women, and youth exiting corrections are humans who have hope for their future unless the system has dehumanized them. So I'll stop right there.
That's a great place to stop. I want to make sure we have a chance to mention all of your books, but particularly your newest book, From a Black Woman's Soul, because I want people to be able to buy your book and to support your work as readers of your work. Talk about this book, the new one, and then talk about the ones in between as well. But go ahead.
All right. So this last book I wrote, From a Black Woman's Soul to a White Man's Heart, we became the face of true diversity and equity, because so many times we have those that can read a bullet or can repeat what you said or shared, but they don't understand that truth is reality and trauma is real in so many of our bodies, and that just having bullets to go over or having purity information does not mean you can live the experience with the information. And so writing this book means that when I work with Paladin Career and Technical High School in Anoka now, we were in Blaine. We have a $7 million school that was just recently built, a charter school, where many sometimes believe charters are where we have young people who have been thrown away or cast aside. That is not who we are. We say everybody deserves the right to be educated, stimulated, motivated, and able to create for themselves a new way of being. It's one thing for us to thrust our young people into activities and different programs and things like that. But if they have yet to understand how to build connections, how to self-navigate, how to de-escalate themselves, how to breathe instead of holding one's breath. There are so many different things that we need to take notice of, and we wonder why our children are harming one another or harming others or hurting themselves. And sometimes our babies are cutting themselves just to release some other things that have been going on in their life to put the focus somewhere else. It's not just the cut. But so many have already been scarred and broken, and many believe beyond repair. But we can always have that which is broken repair itself. Because how did they survive out there in the world on their own if they hadn't already learned some form of navigating through life, right? They have gifts, they have purpose, they have desires, they have dreams. And as parents, we have those dreams too. But it doesn't always mean you had Dr. Spock or Dr. Ruth or the books to read, because there was a time in our lives when we didn't have books, right? Let alone we're writing them, right? And so this handbook means we've done some work. And my norm as a so-called Black woman, and I have a lot to say about that, and we probably won't get into that today because we don't have that much time, but the last chapter in the book is called Murder in the Spirit Within. And so if race was created, then we've all lived a lie in my eyes. And I even said to my son, who they say is Black, and myself and others, if race was constructed, then Black is truly not a reality, and neither is white. And how do we deconstruct not only whiteness, but our own Blackness, and to create truth to what is reality?
And truth makes us what?
Truth sets us free.
Okay.
And free comes from within. It's not surface. And so we are going beyond surface demonstrations and conversations to get real deep with this. And let me say this, Mr. McFarlane. I've written 5 books, self-published, without funding from community, without funding from other people, designed 2 organizations on my own, Women Planting Seeds. I still have the website up. I paid out of pocket the whole time. Sunny Love, I pay out of pocket for everything I have and everything that I've done. And people say you work for free. I did Facebook Live ministry online for almost 6 years, just because everybody deserves to be free sometimes of ourselves, right? No tithes, no offering, but the offering is your time to benefit oneself, to say we can be different than we once were. I know I am not Sunny Love anymore. I am Reverend Dr. Mary Whitney, because I've done the work and I've been groomed at the foot of pastors for 17 years under one pastor. So now I can license, ordain, bury, and consecrate others into the ministry, but it's a work in progress, right? And so I write because it makes a difference. I write because it matters. And I write because they're guidebooks that will help guide and walk any individual through a new way of thinking and reframing one's own life to be the life they desire to leave as a legacy. If my son or daughter was watching me in my casket, what would I want them to see? And how would I want them to describe who their mother is today?
Let me ask you to elevate that same question, and I'll challenge you in a positive way to go deep. And when you think about, your parents, the people that preceded you in existence, what thoughts, what feelings, what knowledge, what knowing comes to your mind and spirit when you sort of close your eyes and try to think back? How far do you think back? And how do you see yourself today connected to everything that has happened in the past? What does history have to do with you? What do you have to do? Your personal body and self and spirit right now have to do with the history of the world? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is the other side of the same coin. Through you, what do you envision for the future, not only for your son or your children, but for their children and their children and their children ad infinitum? What world do you see as possibility and desirable? And do you believe that your work today builds bricks towards the establishment of that? Big question. You can throw it away, laugh at it, do anything you want with it, but that's what's on my mind. So, Sister Mary, Dr. Mary, what do you think?
When you said go all the way back, as far as I can go back as that child, and looking at my parent, because my mother married my stepfather, who was the father of 2 sons, who molested me as a child, and then the father themselves. And what I go back to is all of that didn't take my soul away, because man didn't give it and man can't take it away. It's to say that I was groomed for the moment in time you and I are sitting together today, and to say, Mr. McFarlane, we're just beginning the real work to say openness, truthfulness, and trauma. The acronym is defined in my book, From a Black Woman's Soul to a White Man's Heart, to give people a very clear perspective on you can't just throw away all of that pain and shame and start over from scratch when you know within yourself you're just scratching the surface. So I want to say I know what it's like to be abused, but I know what it's like to design and create and become anew and be fresh on who we are. One thing I'm going to leave with you is this. I told my director, why did he give me the title of equity and cultural liaison along with restorative practice coach and trauma responsive person? And he said he knew what I didn't know, I would go explore and find out. I found out more than I really wanted to know about race and how it was established during medieval times, and to make a Black person sin free through being white and clean in spirit. It's a huge difference in what's being taught, and we look at ourselves as less than because of the color of your skin. But the skin is the beauty of all things, but the world has defined it as ugly or less than. We are more than 2/3 of a human being. We are fully human, and so is everyone else. And I just want to see everyone as human beings, because I do have a son who's interracial, whose father was white and died white, they say. But I won't separate any part of him to make him just be my Black son. And when are we going to live our truth and stop playing this game of staying sick all the time?
Let's invite people to get your books. We'll put up again and take a minute. We've got about a minute left, but thank you for this wonderful and rich conversation, Dr. Mary Whitney. How do people find you, either online or where can they buy your books?
It's www.sunnylovellc.com. And my number is 612-558-5721. And those inside have that same number, because we never know when we need to call for help. I'm listed with 211 under Women Planting Seeds as well, as a domestic violence advocate and helping those come back into society gracefully, respectfully, and appreciated wholly.
Is the community catching up with the thing you called for a generation ago? And that is that we be intentional in supporting and inviting people to come back into community, into family, from incarceration, from banishment by the courts or by the community? Is that happening now or not?
You know, Mr. McFarlane, you asked me to be my truthful self. I see a lot of organization getting funding and money and housing dollars and all these other things. But sometimes that shame and that knowledge that they need to have shared with them has not been demonstrated to them. So I think we have a ways to go.
We got some work to do. Listen, thank you so much. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you.